Thank you.
Hey, Daryl, have you heard about the crews working on Virtue Road drainage?
I'm sorry, Mayor. Could you repeat that?
I said, have you heard if Bud's crew is working on the Virtue Road drainage
Yes,
situation?
yes, they've been working on that since this morning. I think they have it all cleared up at this point.
Okay, great. Thanks.
There's an awful lot of debris in front of the pipes where it crosses.
Okay, this is Mark Shipley, uh, and we're going to start the staff developer meeting for Tuesday, March 30th. We have 3 items on today's agenda. And let me note that this meeting can be viewed live on the Farragut YouTube channel at www.townoffarragut.org/livestream or on Charter Channel 193 and TDS Channel 3. This meeting is being held virtually as authorized by Governor Lee's executive orders regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 items on the agenda. The first one, the 1:30 slot, is a discussion and public hearing on a concept plan for the Grove at Boyd Station subdivision, basically at the eastern intersection of McPhee Road and Boyd Station Road. This one has it's a large piece of property. It was recently rezoned. That's 132 acres, and they're proposing 285 lots. It's zoned R1 OSMR, which allows a mixture of attached and detached residential. This is the concept layout, and very similar, if not almost identical to what was shown with the rezoning discussions. The just to orient you here, this project is proposing an access off of McPhee Road. This is the roundabout. Highlight that here. This is the roundabout across from the park, McPhee Park. So they'll have an access proposed here, and then there's also an access onto Boyd Station Road. That's the only 2 vehicular accesses at this time. Property actually, as we talked about during the rezoning, property actually did have a lot that actually extended out to Virtue Road, but they're not proposing any vehicular access to Virtue Road, just a walking trail. The staff actually met with the applicant to talk namely about Boyd Station Road and the improvements that would be expected for that section of their frontage, which is over 3,000 feet. So it's a pretty substantial amount of frontage. And that will need to be reflected on the revised concept plan. I don't think the designer had enough time to work that into this initial concept plan. The purpose of the staff developer meetings is really to go over staff comments with the applicant to see if the applicant had any questions or clarifications, things that needed to be discussed. And this is a big piece of property. We did have some comments, though I don't think any were particularly earth-shattering. You can see the mixture of housing types here. You've got the attached single family section through here. Then there's another section down along Boyd Station Road. The rezoning basically conditioned this development on no more than 100 attached dwelling units, and they comply with that stipulation. So just to point out a few of the comments that the staff had that might be discussed further. There are a couple of walking trails that stub into the property from the cottages at Price Farm, and they're kind of up in this area. So they would need to connect to that and extend that into their development. Another comment that the staff had was consistent with the connectivity requirements of our land use plan and the subdivision regulations was to figure out a place to stub a vehicular and walking trail connection to the north. These properties are pretty large and could be re-subdivided in the future, and it would make logical extension of the transportation system to try to again avoid the situations that we have too much of in the town, and that is single access subdivisions or limited connectivity, and people are forced out onto the collector streets and create issues with overloading those streets. So that's a couple of the notable comments. I think by and large, just looking through, and again, the applicant may have some questions or comments. Again, the Boyd Station Road improvements will need to be picked up, and I think the intent, based on our conversation a couple of weeks ago, was to have a walking trail that would parallel Boyd Station Road with a pretty significant grass strip separation where they can. There's an existing distribution line system that's right next to Boyd Station Road that will be removed and transitioned over to the overhead transmission line easement, which is further into the property. And it's really no buildings can be placed under those transmission line easements, so it is a logical location for a walking trail. So then there would be some improvements to Boyd Station Road itself. We had a little bit of a conversation about how to try to slow traffic speeds along Boyd Station Road. It's a very straight road that kind of invites people to go fast. So one thing we're trying to look at with the applicant is what measures could be taken across their frontage to try to slow traffic speed. So that's some things that we're exploring with the applicant and probably will be discussed in more detail today and then at the Planning Commission meeting on the 15th. So the stormwater detention basins down next to Boyd Station Road, you can see that. Here's the clubhouse location, kind of in the middle of the attached single family area. This is the somebody has their somebody needs to mute themselves. This is the substation over on McPhee Road, so you can see its relationship to the attached single family portion of the development. So that's kind of a summary of the staff's general comments on this. I guess I'll turn it over to, I believe Russ is on the call. If you had any questions or anything that needed to be clarified you wanted to bring up, and then we can talk with the public and the planning commissioners, board members, whoever else is on the call today.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I just wanted to go through the comments and kind of clarify a couple of things. As it relates to the road improvements, that'll be required in the conversation that we had with the town staff a couple of weeks ago. Um, I, I will add something to show the walking trail and some road improvements, but I'm hesitant to put anything on a concept plan because it would be conceptual. That would require a revised concept if during preliminary plat the town and the developer agreed to improvements that were different than what's shown on the concept plan. So I think I'll just do it. I can, everything's conceptual at this point. I can throw a trail on down there and just put a note about road improvements consistent with the town requirements. And then as we get into detailed design plans, then we can obviously come forward with the detailed design at that point. One of the comments related to Boyd Station, I believe it was from you, Mark, was asking about a deceleration lane for the right turn in from, I guess, heading westbound on Boyd Station. I got the traffic impact study. I think I uploaded it on Monday to the My Government online system, but I believe, Daryl, I think you got it late last week, and it did not warrant a right turn decel lane, which again we then we turn around and talk about speeds and traffic calming at the same time. I think there's plenty of stopping sight distance there. One of the other comments, Daryl, you had about that access and the grades directly adjacent to it. Well, that area will be cut down. Obviously, we have to provide sight distance, so that area will be cut down. And somewhere in that general area, there'll be a sewer pump station, FUD sewer pump station put in to serve both this community and anything else that they do within their system operations. The connections to the north, where you're asking to stub a road out, those are four large tracts over 5 acres in size, with on a shared easement, and two of those 4 lots already have multi-million-dollar estates built on them. I'm not certain. I'm have the surveyor look to see if those are deed restricted by the original subdivider from further subdivision, and if that's the case, I think it just wouldn't make sense to stub a road out to property that can never be subdivided, or that is highly unlikely to be in that they're million-dollar estates. That they're not going to subdivide that off of a private road. I think it would take at least the 2 owners that have already built on the front 2 lots to agree to allow somebody to convert their shared drive into a public road in order for the 2 large lots in the back to develop. And I don't see that happening. I understand your regulation of stubbing roads out, but it doesn't make sense to stub a road out that's never going to get connected or never have the possibility to get connected. And as you know from the plan that we brought in for the Meadows on McPhee, we're not opposed to stubbing roads out. We stubbed them out in all directions over there. But that's because it was adjacent to properties that are possibly and likely to be developed at some time in the future.
Well, actually, Russ, this is Mark. I didn't have a specific location. I just noted that common property line it doesn't necessarily. I mean, if there's a place up there where I understand your point, and I think that's a good point.
Okay.
But if there is a place where it logically could happen in the future, just take a look at that, because that's something that I know will come up at the full planning commission meeting.
Well, the only other place would be Mr. Williams' property, and I don't know that he would necessarily be on board with stubbing a road out, and maybe if he or his heirs or grandkids or great grandkids sell his estate one day, maybe it would get subdivided. I don't know, but we can definitely take a look at it. I don't want to create a dead end that's like I see in a lot of subdivisions throughout West Knoxville and even some in Farragut where you just have a dead end that's just a perpetual dead end, and it never amounts to anything. Obviously, we'd have to work it out where this is a really large project and a really expensive project, so it's very sensitive on the total number of units. So um, we'd have to figure out a way to do it without losing a lot. And of course that is the prime, that area up there off of that field roller loop road. That is the high point. That's the best views in the whole on the whole property. And would hate to consume that with a stub road to nowhere. But we can certainly look at it or discuss it. I understand. I guess if we wanted to not do it, we would have to ask for a variance from the planning commission from the subdivision regulations. Is that correct, Mark? For the stub out to adjoining properties?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the exact language because you do have obviously more than one way in and out of the development.
Right.
I'll take a closer look at the specific language.
Okay.
But I would kind of explore that north boundary to see if there is a logical and topographically feasible place to where, both a walking trail and a street could be stubbed. That would potentially make sense in the future.
Okay. Moving on to, I guess, Daryl, you had some comments on for Branch Hook Lane and Wagon Hitch Road, which are both loops that to design them to 35. We went through this on the last project on what's a loop road and what's a dead end road. But if these two roads aren't loop roads, I guess I don't understand what a loop road is. To design it per the regulations to AASHTO 30 instead of AASHTO 35.
Russ, that's kind of an ambiguous thing in our subdivision regs that we are going to have to clear up. We've been talking about that some. I think all I was mostly concerned with was the sight distance over crest. Let me go back to, do you remember what sheet that's on?
Yes. Let me, do I remember? No. Can I pull it up real fast? Yes. It's C120, sheet 9.
Hey, Russ, do you want me to try to pull up the blue beam drawings for that?
No, I've got them up. I've got them up on my end.
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted me to pull them up here.
No, I mean, it's pretty simple. I've got sags at 37 on a loop road, which is 30 mile an hour, and crest of 19, and you're asking for 29 and 49 respectively, which is what I designed the main road through, which obviously isn't a loop or a dead end. And in fact, Field Roller, which is the north, the furthest to the east, the big loop with the two crossroads, I designed that loop to 35 as well because of the number of units on it. Even though it could be considered a loop road, there's a couple of internal loops. So again, I just wanted to clarify as before I get way on down further down the road than I already am with the road design on what is the requirement. I'm not picking curves arbitrarily. I know I had one crest curve in there that was really large. You want to be to shorten up because it would create a flat spot at the top of the hill, but a lot of that was done to daylight grading at the back of the lots. So I can look at adjusting that particular one on Field Roller. But my question for clarity is Branch Hook Lane and Wagon Hitch Road, the two half circles or two half loops right in the middle from roundabout to roundabout. Are those loop roads or are they not? And if they're not, why aren't they?
Russ, I won't disagree with you. I do believe the larger loop it needs to be 35 miles per hour.
I got that.
Lots on that.
Yep.
I don't have a real issue with the snag. The KF49, that's really just an issue with headlights where they hit in front of the vehicle. With the crest on the other, well, if the planning commission wants to call it a loop, we can call it a loop and go with the 30 mile per hour. I mean, I don't take an issue with the radius of horizontal curves. On a loop road, you're allowed to go to a 100-foot radius, which really corresponds with about a 20 mile per hour horizontal design. 150-foot radius curve is slightly more than that. They don't meet what we're requiring on the vertical curves. I'm okay with both of those if planning commission is. With calling those loops, I just feel like you're kind of at the edge where I wouldn't want to see one much longer than those considered a loop.
Okay. Well,
one other thing, Russ, you mentioned that the traffic impact study says that a decel lane is not warranted. I'm okay with that, but I do feel like there should be at least a taper to get vehicles off of the roadway.
but then at the but then at the same time, you're wanting to look at traffic calming. So if I would agree if there was severe vertical or horizontal displacement in the road, but that's literally a flat, straight section of road with, you know, virtually infinite sight distance for a stopping condition. So,
right. I understand what you're saying, but having someone stop in front of me, that will slow me down. But
well, people have to use people have to use their turn signals. Hey, I live in a neighborhood off of North Shore near Westland, so I know all about traffic and trying to get in and out of a neighborhood on a road that has probably 10 to 20 to 30 times the volume that Boyd Station has. So, but we don't have A-cell, D-cell, center turn lanes, anything like that. Of course, it's an older neighborhood, and when this place was put in the 80s, there wasn't that much traffic. But I digress. I think we'll submit it as it is for now. We've still got to look at the road improvements, and we still have the constraint of the transmission line, the base pole, the base of pole elevation at grade, which I can't disturb, and how close to that base of pole I can grade in order to get an extra 13 feet for a deceleration lane might be a great issue.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So we'll
hush for now on that then.
Okay.
We'll take a look at it as this moves along.
Well, again, this is a concept plan, and I understand that, you know, it pretty much sets the tone moving forward. But I think engineering items such as traffic safety and travel speeds and stuff can be finalized at the preliminary plat design stage. So
I'm good with that.
Okay. I had a couple of comments. Mark, you're asking me to add a sheet which highlights the pedestrian facilities and how they are connected internally and externally. So basically, you're wanting me to duplicate a sheet I already have, but just turn off the contour lines to make it more.
Yeah, it's just a little bit hard to follow. I mean, I appreciate you putting the contour lines on sheets, and it's helpful, but sometimes with linear kind of maps, it gets really busy and it's hard to pick them out. So maybe if you could do
how about
trails in one color and then the sidewalks in another color.
That's what I was going to say. Since we're mostly digital on the plans at this stage, if I just, when I replot them, just make them a different color so that they pop out.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
And really my only objection to adding a sheet is that then I have to revise every single sheet to change the sheet number and the total number of sheets in the set. So if that
Well,
sheet X of Y note wasn't down there, it wouldn't be a big deal to add a
yeah.
sheet to the title page and stick one in the back. But
I mean, if you can achieve the objective without adding another
okay,
sheet, that's fine. It was just hard to follow the system,
yeah,
and it would be easier, especially at this big a piece of property. Just how is it connected internally and then externally?
right. I understand. I'll try to do a better job at that. One question, Bart had a comment about the on Branch Hook Road where the townhomes are, about considering pedestrian connections to the clubhouse rather than walking the sidewalk around to the main entrance. Um, I, that's something that I'm certain the developer will want to look at from a standpoint of an HOA pedestrian access and not a town of Farragut 20-foot easement with an 8-foot asphalt on top of 11 foot of stone. Um, and so that's why I'm not showing it as part of the public um, or the overall. There's not room between these units. Um, well, there's barely enough room between these triplexes in a couple of locations to put a 20-foot town of Farragut easement and an 8-foot trail, but and not having the amenity site finalized yet on what that's going to look like. Of then there's more trails in there, and I don't understand. I guess if that's more of just a comment for us to for our customers' benefit, or is it a requirement by the town of Farragut? Because then you would be essentially having to maintain trails all the way up to the clubhouse, which I don't think that's something the town wants to do.
Hey, Russ, from my standpoint, it was really just a suggestion. I was just thinking of, that's a higher density area. There's going to be more people back in there, and
Sure.
just having a more convenient link for them to get to the clubhouse, was just something that I thought, might be something you want to look at.
Okay. So it's not anything really that needs to be addressed on resubmittal.
I mean, that's up to I guess everyone else too. But I mean, it was just something I looked at, and I just thought, if I was living back in the back of the turn there, and I was that close to the clubhouse, it might be nice to have a more convenient link. But I don't think it's required necessarily.
Okay. All right.
Probably end up with an informal path because
Right.
people, even though people like to get out and walk, they sometimes will they just take the shortcut. So
No,
it's a good comment, and it could just be a 5-foot sidewalk. I mean, it doesn't have to be
right.
it doesn't
I mean,
have to
it
be
would,
a 20-foot easement or anything like that.
right. Yeah, that's what I'm getting to. I'm not. It had already crossed my mind, but again, I didn't want to um, establish something on the concept that may not be ideally located or feasible by grade, and definitely didn't want to create something that then was going to have to be a 20-foot easement, town of Farragut, and all that stuff versus just a pedestrian thoroughfare that would be owned and maintained by the HOA, just like the clubhouse and the facilities around the clubhouse will be. So I'm not opposed to the comment. Just want to clarify to have plans resubmitted by Monday. That I'm probably not going to show anything on here now for that, but it's certainly something that I'll take up with Bob and Thomas, and we'll address on the design stage once we start laying out utilities and where those are going to fall, and drainage and where the pipes are going to fall, and all that kind of stuff at the more detailed level. I think that's all I had. Really, it's just down to the stubs. This and I'm totally missed the walking trail stubs out of Price Farms, but I am looking at their location and wondering if is there really a point in connecting to both of them, or just to connect to one of them and bring it up, because they're pretty close together. Um,
Yeah, that's a good point. You might look at bringing them together, and then they could come into your development in one location, but then they kind of are you tie in and you get the two stubs connected so that they're all kind of connected but not two separate. I don't know. It'd be something to look at topographically too. I think you've got that depression up there.
right, and I've got room. I've got room to the west of that depression, outside of the lip elevation, to get a trail into the sidewalk there. I'd have to figure out where a good crosswalk location is, but so I could definitely tie into that one in the middle. I'm also being a little sensitive of that tree line down there, and not wanting to cut too much of it, especially the connection, the stub out further to the east of the two, where it's going to be right behind a lot, and they would probably prefer to have that old growth tree line fence row intact behind their property, rather than a cut through, you know. So I'll propose something on the resubmittal. I think as long as we create connectivity. I know when you did Price Farms, it was kind of a guess on how and where and what things were going to develop in the future. So you just kind of stubbed some stuff out. But um, okay, I think, yeah, that's all I had. And I think we can move forward from here and get the plans revised for next Monday's deadline.
Is there any planning commissioners or board members or anybody else that has any observations or questions regarding this project?
Hey, Mark.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, I just had one question about the walking trail that you spoke about at the beginning, and that's the one proposed that would run west to east, parallel with Boyd Station Road. Would the intent of that trail to be continue over the entrance on Boyd Station Road to the eastern portion of the property, and then do a 90-degree northeast jaunt up to meet up with a walking trail up by the church and the power lines, in order to make that full loop?
I can explain that. Now, are you talking about on the western end, Scott?
No, I'm talking about on the eastern end of the property where Mark's got it highlighted right there. And then dropping down right where you get to the units and come down. Yeah, there you go, Mark.
Yeah, that's really what we're talking about, because
okay,
that's where the transmission line, basically the transmission line easement does that. It goes due south once it gets through that track that it fronts on. Here's the easement, actually. Here's Virtue Road.
Yep.
So you got the easement comes into the property, and then instead of going through the property in a westerly direction, it goes due south.
So it does drop there. Okay, I wasn't sure about that. Yeah.
So the trail probably would be within that easement and kind of meandering as appropriate.
Yep. Okay.
And then if there's opportunities to connect it internally from that main trail, that's certainly something we'd want to look at. It's probably going to be a development like the cottages. It's going to have a lot of walking trails, so it's got a lot of amenities, for
that was my question. That's good. Thank you.
That's why I'd asked for the pedestrian facilities to be easier to find and follow, just because it's a really important component of this project, both for them, for marketing purposes, and for the community in that part of the town in general. I think it's a lot of amenities for the development and the community with this big development.
Mark, this is John Green. I have a comment. Seems like I recall when this original concept was presented, we had some comments from the Williams family about an extreme buffer between their property and the development.
Mm-hmm.
I notice on this drawing that the actual residential property up there kind of cuts across the corner. Uh, has his concern been partially resolved by that, or or do we
Well,
expect to have more comments from him?
I mean, he does have a pretty good area of open space
Yeah.
in this triangular area.
Has there
So
been any
it's,
conversation between the developer and the Williams, or between the
I
town
don't
and
know, not to my knowledge, I'm not sure, but I haven't talked to Mr. Williams since the initial comments were submitted. As Russ mentioned earlier, as far as views, the prime lots are going to be up in the upper part of the development, so they wouldn't want to make that open space through there.
No, I understand that. I
But
just
he
was
does have a pretty substantial, open space area right here that's
Yeah.
closer to his home that is much greater than what, you would typically see. And then they've got, of course, the 25-foot buffer along the rest of the periphery minimum, similar to what is in Sugarwood, that abuts Sugarwood and other developments that have the OSR, OSMR, Saddle Ridge, Fox Run, different places like that. So,
my second comment is I heard the discussion today a little bit about some road improvements on Boyd Station. Can somebody talk a little more about that?
Daryl, do you want to talk about that a little bit, or?
There's still a little bit of a question about whether or not we're going to have curb and gutter, but we're looking at, I'd like to see two 11-foot lanes with a 2-foot paved shoulder on the south side. It would be more or less moving the northern edge of pavement 4 feet out from where it is now. Preferably at least a 6-foot grass strip over to a 10-foot mixed use path. I'm not sure where that puts the trail with regards to overhead utilities. Russ, you can speak to that.
Yeah, I think the trail the key there is at least 6 foot grass strip. It may be 30 foot in some places. The trail may need to diverge from being closely parallel and associated with the road in order to get on the other side of the power poles and work its way roughly parallel to Boyd Station. So
I think we'd all agree that would be fantastic. Russ, I did have one question about you and I talked earlier about being able to drain. If we have curb and gutter, do you have elevations as far as the pipes that go under Boyd Station?
yes, yes, I do.
Can you send those over to me?
Yes, I'll have to get it in a format. I still have it in survey data format.
Okay.
I haven't got that far yet. So
Do you have downstream located or downstream?
we have invert in, invert out. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't quite sure if anything just went straight under the railroad or.
Well, no, there's a ditch. There's a ditch between the road and the railroad tracks
Right.
within their easement that conveys water to the east. For most of it, there's a small section closer to McPhee, I think goes back the other way to a culvert. I did not locate where it may or may not cross under the double railroad tracks, just where the culverts were under Boyd Station Road, both sides of the road. So
It's
both inverts.
it's kind of a tough call where your controls really are. If you're locked to an elevation, what's going under the railroad, but also just if you're locked into an elevation on the ditch on the south side.
Yeah.
What we're talking about for some of you is the idea is to possibly eliminate the curb and gutter if necessary on that north side, just because in order to get, to put pipes on a minimum grade and still get proper cover under the road, we could be running into a vertical issue. So I'm just trying to confirm whether or not we even can have curb and gutter on the north side of Ward Station.
And Daryl, I'll have some preliminary design profiles and or cross sections to you. Hopefully by middle of next week. I'm trying to move pretty fast with this to stay on Mr. Money's desired timeline. So not taking anything for granted, but taking the risk that that my work won't efforts won't be in vain as far as layout and stuff. But it looks like that, generally speaking, the layout, and like I told everybody at the rezoning, it's a pretty detailed sketch I sent y'all. There's been a few tweaks and adjustments, but for the most part, it is exactly what was presented for the rezoning, with again a few detailed tweaks and adjustments. So, but I've got the data. We did a survey drone flight and then a field locate of the inverts, and so I've got the true edge of asphalt and all that, and I've just got to get that data processed and pulled together and get it set up, and I'll run some cross sections and get them to you, and then we can look at it and look at the cross sections and figure out what we have room to do and what we don't.
Sure, that sounds great. Thanks.
Okay. Yep.
I have one more comment, if I can. At the entrance to the development from the traffic circle over by the park there, if you go in there and then you take your first right into that little cul-de-sac, those properties along the road there abut 2 or 3 large residential lots there that are McPhee Road lots. Will there be any kind of buffer of trees or anything between the development properties and the existing properties? I'm reading Tiffany, Plato, and I can't read Stokes, I guess it is. Will there be some buffers between the existing residents along that road?
Yes, Commissioner Green, there's a 25-foot common area strip and a 50-foot periphery setback required. So there'll be no structure within 50 feet of their property line, and any existing tree line through there would be maintained within that 25-foot buffer or 25-foot common area strip. So
I don't think there's any trees there, though, is there?
Yeah.
There is?
Yeah, the old fence line has some trees on them. It's not a wooded area by any means, but the fence line, or they maybe those property owners' trees, where they were screening themselves from the cattle farm or the hay field or whatever it used to be. I'm not sure, but we can pull up. I probably can't get to an aerial that fast, but if you look at
I bring it up because I'm pretty sure we'll probably get a comment like that from the property owners. So you may want to give that some thought. It would seem to me that, these folks, it seems to me like when I rode down through there, it looked like you could look right through those yards into the field. I don't remember any trees there. So now they're going to look right in their backyard and they're going to have a row of houses immediately on their, I understand there's a buffer zone there. I get it.
Yeah.
But it's still going to have like a home in their backyard pretty much. So I was curious if there's going to be any kind of a buffer, any row of trees or anything in there to provide a little boundary.
Yeah, John, this is Mark. It would be probably like what we did with the Ivy Farm subdivision. You'd pick out sections of the buffer strip where it would need to be revegetated, and then places there's so much physical separation to other lots, there wouldn't be any reason to buffer it. But certainly along those house lots, if it doesn't have a existing, dense buffer established already, they would be supplementing that.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable for the existing owners, and it's not a large boundary portion for the size of this development. It's really a fairly small section along those 2 or 3 lots there that might need a little vegetation. That's all I had. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we can definitely discuss that. I mean, if you look at the landscape plans that were submitted as part of the concept, we've focused the majority of our tree planting on street trees, and then the required landscaping for the detention basin. And I just pulled up the aerial, and you're right, that one lot right there, not the Plato's, but the Stokes. It looks like they cleared their lot all the way to their property line, including the old fence row. So um, my perspective on that is they should have left. They should have left some screening since they didn't own the property behind them. It's not. I'm not saying that we won't put anything there, but I just don't. At the end of the day, I don't see how we could do anything different. And it's never had trees before, so I mean, and they had to know something was going to happen there at some point. So I'm not trying to sound mean here. I'm just trying to be real about it. And I know the Plato's look like that they have a row of trees about 50 feet behind their house to screen their view of the field. So, you know,
Russ, I can pull up the aerial if you'd like me to share that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds on this.
Okay.
We'll do what we need to do. Maybe I don't want to get into the weeds, but I think I just did.
Oh, sorry, I'd already hit that.
No, you're okay.
Say no more. I think it just went away. I hope it just went away.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good. That's definitely something we can look at, Mark, but we'll just see. I think we're already proposing a lot more trees than required, um, based on replacement trees, because there's not a tremendous amount of trees out here. You think that's crazy for 130 acres, but it's been 98% hayfield for as long as I've been alive that I can remember. So at least the last 40 years. So other than the old tree lines or old fence rows is about the only trees there. And I'm sure there's some significant trees there that we'll have to calculate a replacement for. But there's no area laid out that's like a big dense wooded area that you would naturally want to save. It's just wide open field separated by fence lines. So
Mark, could you go back? Mark, could you go back to your drawing again?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Could you bring up the concept drawing again? I'm looking at just.
Is it not on there?
No, it's not on there now.
Okay.
Daryl did something, and his disappeared. Now I just have it.
One shares, the other can't.
All right, let me try to pull it back
would come back
That's
up.
all right. Is it back up?
Nope.
All right, let me see if I can get it here. Not sure if that's.
Yeah, there. It's up now.
Yeah, you got it. All right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Did you have a question about it?
Well, I was looking at I guess what's the dimension of that buffer zone right where your marker is there?
It's 25
Between
feet.
the residential.
The most narrow place is 25 feet. It's a little
25 feet.
misleading on this. It looks tiny on this, but it's really at least 25 feet. And then it's obviously wider in some.
And this new development has jurisdiction of that 25 feet?
Well, the Planning Commission actually has the final say on the kind of buffer arrangement in the OSMR or the OSR, either one. So what we did, if you remember, on the Ivy Farm subdivision north of Union Road, the lots that backed up to Saddle Ridge were required a buffer because the lots are right up against existing house lots, kind of like what you have on some of this development. And those probably just need to be, if they don't have plant material there, that would be areas where the landscape plan would need to reflect a new 25-foot buffer planting. And then, other areas, they'll probably, and I think they are beefing up the buffer in the area that abuts the substation area, and that's a protection for this development. So they'll just have to kind of look at the buffer as a whole and figure out the sections where new plant material would make sense and where it would be unnecessary, and, you know, apply that. So like up on these sections here that are pretty narrow, if they don't have existing fence row vegetation, which they probably do, then that might be some opportunity to supplement that a little bit through there. And then when it gets wider there, you've got enough physical space to where having a buffer really wouldn't, to me, wouldn't make a lot of sense. So, you know, just adding a bunch of trees through this section, to me, wouldn't make much sense because you got a lot of physical space between the new development and anything that's existing. So you just have to look at it, I think, comprehensively and figure out where the buffer makes sense, where it maybe doesn't, and then let the planning commission look at that and see if that makes sense and is reasonable.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said, because there are areas here where we probably really don't need any additional
Yeah.
buffer, but there is that that one area along there that we started this conversation about that probably needs something there. That's all the comments I have. Thank you.
Mayor Williams.
Okay.
Russ, this is for us. You've got the entrance there at the roundabout. You've also got something that looks like an appendage that sticks out there right below that. If you're going south, it looks like it runs over to McPhee Road. What is that? Just a piece of the property?
Yes. Yeah, it's about a 25 or 30-foot wide piece of property. It's just a lineage piece of the original track. So I'm showing a greenway trail through there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. And during construction, are you planning to have and this is personal questions because I've been asked these questions by property owners. Will the construction entrance be on Boyd Station?
I honestly, Mr. Mayor, I haven't thought that far ahead. It all depends on, there's quite a bit of grading for the access on Boyd Station. There is an existing driveway initially that'll be used to get in and out of the property.
Okay, got it.
But as far as once we get into daily operations of mass grading, our first phase, the first area that we want to plat is off of McPhee Road. So that may be the functioning access for you know, the construction workers and operators and stuff as we're doing the development project. It just depends on how it unfolds with the grading and whether or not we can even get to where we need to get from Boyd Station until we work our way down there and get all that to grade.
Okay, well, you folks have done a really good job about keeping your road area clean. You did at Brass Rail, and I suspect you will do the same at the Meadows. And it's kind of critical here to roundabout. You know, I'd hate to see that be just rock and gravel and everything all over that area right there.
Well, no, obviously, if some, we're not perfect, but we always clean up very, very quickly if we have an issue. So
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I've had, like I said, I've had questions. The other thing that concerns me is we've learned a little bit from Brookmere about the secondary entrance, and that was the reason I asked about the one on Boyd Station. I think it's, and with this big of a development, I would like to see a secondary entrance pretty quick when we start selling houses because of some of the things that you think about whenever you don't have but one entrance. Okay.
Yeah. No, I follow you, and we probably would from subgrade and gravel standpoint.
Right.
I don't know that we want to pave all, and I say that because we've got to get the pump station in, which is going to be down near the Boyd Station entrance, which is going to have to be operational to serve anything that we want to build on. So even if we want to focus on final paving and curbs and grassing to plat some lots off of McPhee to get some inventory on the books, we still would have to have a significant amount of the grading and utilities in down towards Boyd Station. So we could definitely, it would at least have a, you know, a gravel road essentially, even if it's not fully paved or bonded or anything, until we get some of the other grading done in the other areas. So I think we would have a traversable alternate route just by default of getting the main sewer trunk line down, and anything else that makes sense to get in with or prior to the sewer. I just don't know that we'd put all that asphalt in until we get everything else graded, or else it's just going to get beat up. So
No, I'm just looking at something that's passable, okay? No,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that
no,
that's a big concern to a lot of us, okay?
yep. No, I'm with you. And I think once at preliminary plat and we break it down into kind of phases, by TDEC, I can't disturb more than 50 acres at a time. So it's not like I can, even though the intent is to design the whole project and come through and get it approved at one time, we will have it phased from a construction staging standpoint to meet the less than 50 acres disturbed rule by TDEC, and to bite off some areas that we can get 100% complete and record a plat on, while we're continuing to work on the other areas, if that makes sense. So I think at that stage we'll have a lot better feel for um, you know, how things will develop, and how that secondary access would be passable at what point and how. So um, yeah, good point though. Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor.
Okay. That's all I've got.
Anyone else have any questions, comments on this? Okay, well, the resubmittal will be due on Monday, by midnight. We start looking at them at 12:01 a.m. So if you can get it in, we'll have it on the agenda for the 15th for the full planning commission to review the concept plan. Let's take about a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene at 2:30 for the second item. Okay, this is Mark Shipley again. We'll start with the second item on the agenda for today. And this will be a discussion item at the Planning Commission meeting on the 15th. It is a pretty broad item. It involves potential updates to our major road plan and then some sections perhaps of the subdivision regulations as they relate to street construction requirements. Let me just pull up a couple of images here. Back in 2017, actually, the staff presented for workshop purposes, some possible changes to the major road plan that were discussed with the Planning Commission. And we haven't really made those changes yet. We never did bring it back in an ordinance. We had some areas that we wanted to revisit and think a little bit more about. And so at the staff level, we've had some conversation about the major road plan and what maybe needs to be updated or added or taken out to bring it up to current conditions. So let me review those things real quick, and then we'll get into other discussion points with this item. So one thing that has changed since the major road plan, actually the major road plan was not holistically updated. It hasn't been updated since 2010 as far as the whole map. There's different sections that have been updated. This would be the entire map, trying to update it. One thing we wanted to do is to make the map more visual, so that different classifications of streets had different colors and line patterns to help them stand out from each other. So the way that our streets are classified on the major road plan is very similar to most other communities. Of course, we have the interstate is the highest level of the hierarchy. That's actually controlled by TDOT. Then the solid red lines are the arterial streets, major arterial streets. That's streets like Kingston Pike and North Watt Road, Concord Road. Those are kind of, traffic coming through the town, both inside the town and people that are passing through the town are using the arterial street system. Collector streets are the next in line, and they basically transport traffic to the arterial streets, and they basically collect traffic from what's called local streets, and that's usually streets that are internal to subdivisions, the lowest traffic generation streets. So basically those local streets feed into collector streets, and then collector streets feed into arterial streets. So that's kind of how this aspect of transportation works in the town and really most communities. So as far as updating the map, and this is actually a legal document, it's actually recorded at the Register of Deeds through an ordinance that it's ultimately approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. So it's a very powerful document, actually, that I don't think a lot of communities realize the power of the major road plan, because if you show things on the major road plan, you have some ability to ensure that in that general location, that kind of street gets built in the future. So it's a very important document. One thing that's changed since 2010 is there's been a new street that's been constructed through the old Swan Farm, the Ivy Farms Road, that connects Kingston Pike to Union Road in this location. And that really will be serving as a major collector. Again, it will be collecting traffic from really another collector street, which would be Union Road and part of Everett Road. and bringing it down in some cases to Kingston Pike. Then there also would be a couple of local streets that would feed into Ivy Farms Road. So that's one proposed change, is to actually acknowledge that street, put it on the map, and then we'll classify it as a major collector. A major collector versus a minor collector, sometimes it's a little, fine line between the two, but obviously the major collector is going to have more average daily trips than a minor collector. A lot of times minor collectors are just significant roads that would otherwise be considered a local street. But there may be a lot of local streets that feed into them, so they become a collector. So this one would be proposed as a major collector. Another thing that we're proposing to change, and this was talked about in 2017 when this was presented to the Planning Commission, was to acknowledge the function of Grigsby Chapel Road, and really, and also bring it in line with the state's classification for this road, and that is a minor arterial. It's currently a major collector up into Fretz Road. From Smith Road at Kingston Pike to Fretz Road, it's currently a major collector. And we're proposing to change that to a minor arterial. Road is currently a minor arterial from Fretz Road east to North Campbell Station Road. So that's the second change. A couple of housekeeping items in the north part of the town is removing an old road extension off of West Campbell Lakes Drive. As you all may know, I mean, Campbell Lakes Drive kind of dead ends to essentially the Grigsby Chapel Greenway trailhead at the park and ride lot. And really, realistically, there's no ability to extend that street based on how development has occurred over the years in that area and the fact that there are jurisdictional wetlands in the area. So we're basically just removing that section, or proposing to remove it from the major road plan. Wouldn't change the existing section. It still would be, a collector street, but it would not be shown as extending any further to the west. And there was also a side street that was originally shown on the major road plan north of the interstate that basically was nullified when the Snyder Road Outlet Drive improvement occurred a few years ago. So that one needs to be taken out. The next area is Boring Road. That's currently a local collector. We're proposing to change that to a major collector. That would be consistent with most of Union Road, Everett Road. There's a lot of undeveloped property along Boring Road, and it also, collects, traffic from local streets. So we're proposing to change that to a major collector. The next change would be down in the south part of the town where Briarstone was tied into Audubon Hills a few years ago through Dunlin Lane. That whole system now from Turkey Creek Road essentially out to Kingston Pike would be functioning as a collector street. So it's even though it's kind of construction wise it's a local street, it's going to function as a collector, so collecting other local street traffic and transporting it to arterial streets. So that one section, this lower part, we're proposing to change that from a local street to a local collector. Midhurst Drive, Red Mill and Midhurst and Peterson are already local collectors on the major road plan. So this would make it consistent with how those streets function. The next proposed change would be on Jamestown Boulevard. It's currently a local collector, and we're proposing to change that to a major collector. That is an area that has been looked at as an alternate to get around the intersection of Campbell Station and Kingston Pike. So it's, and then, you know, when the property to the west of the town hall develops, you know, it will line up and access with Jamestown Boulevard, and there'll be a signalized condition there. So Jamestown will have a fair amount more traffic than it currently has. You also have the community center on the east end of the road now. And then the last thing that we're looking at is just another cleanup item on the map is currently the major road plan stops at the town boundary, but actually the right of way where the town extends on out to Level Road on the north side of Kingston Pike, you know, out to where Costco is. And that needs to be reflected on major road plan. Most of these changes really don't, you know, change much of anything. They really just acknowledge how these streets either currently function or will function likely in the future based on the amount of undeveloped property that is along these different streets. So does anybody have any questions about that at this point before we get into some of the other discussion items?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Green. I have a comment on Snyder Road. Let me back up. You just made the comment that the classification reflects the present use or proposed use or future intended use. On Snyder Road, would that eventually become a major arterial?
You talking about here?
Well, no, for where Top Golf is going to go, and hotels and whatever else is going to go in there. Yeah.
That's actually
We're going to put a,
yeah, this is Outlet Drive here.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I guess the first part of it is actually Snyder.
Well, that's something that we could look at, and maybe that needs to be.
It looks to me like that if we're going to be kind of looking ahead here, I'm pretty sure we're going to want something beside that minor.
Yeah. It's a minor arterial shown on this map, as is Campbell Station Road, essentially north of the Overlook Apartments. But that's something we can certainly look at, you know, and who knows, you know, with Snyder Road.
Does the road change
west,
does the road change at the intersection, or is it somewhere along on the east side of Campbell Station where it changes from Snyder to Campbell?
Yeah, east of Campbell Station is Outlet Drive.
All of it.
And then west is
okay. All right. I thought
it's at a point right here. It's kind of it's not exactly
that intersection
right at the intersection. Yeah, it's right. You know where the where the road starts to veer north. Yeah, the three-way intersection. That's where Outlet.
All right, that's what I thought.
I guess Snyder from the west.
So it's part of Snyder and a part of Outlet Drive seems to me ought to be upgraded.
Yeah, we can look at that for sure. I think that's a reasonable point. Yeah. There were quite a few other amendments the last time we brought this to you all. We took off 2 or 3 of them for now. And then, of course, we added the Ivy Farms Road because that was a new construction. We are still showing, well, one thing that we probably do need to, we might want to upgrade South Watt Road, just in looking at it. Again, this is just a discussion item, but that's a major collector. It might need to be at least a minor arterial. I don't know, Daryl, if you had any thought about that or not, that section. But anyway.
I'm sorry, Mark, which section?
The section that is north of Old Stage to Kingston Pike, South Watt Road. Maybe that maybe should be a minor arterial instead of a major collector. I don't know.
I thought at one point it was a minor arterial. I'm wrong, but I kind of see it as an extension of Old Stage Road,
Yeah.
but it's I can understand your point.
You know, that's where the area that you're talking about, Old Stage Road there. That's really functioning like an arterial these days. People, you know, I ride my bike down through there often, and it's getting pretty busy down through there. People are taking the shortcut. They come up on the highway from Lenore City, and then they, instead of going down to the new intersection where the light is, they go take it right there in Old Stage and shoot over to Kingston Pike. So that's something you may want to take a look at as well. That whole section of Old Stage as a
Yeah, that's a
collector,
good
as an
point. I mean,
arterial.
it's a major collector right now, but it's
Yeah, but it's really functioning. I think I heard you describe the functions, and I think you said use by people who aren't going anywhere on that street. And there's a lot of people that are going somewhere besides that street when they go down that
yeah.
road.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway,
Daryl
just a
knows
comment.
more about these things than I do, but I just in general, I always think of an arterial
Yeah,
as something a little
just a
bit
comment.
more beyond the municipality's limits, you know, and that maybe is how it's functioning now, because that's very, I'm sure a lot of people from Loudoun County and come in and go back out that way. So, yeah, that's something we could take a look at too. So the biggest difference in these classifications a lot of times is the right-of-way width requirement. And then now the grass strip width is different between a collector and an arterial. It's you go from 6 feet on a collector to 8 feet on an arterial. So there's more physical separation between the curb or the traveled way for the vehicles and the multi-use path or whatever other pedestrian facility is proposed. And there, obviously the reason for that is arterial roads should have more traffic on them than collector streets, and therefore there's more need for that factor of safety, and make it more inviting space for people to want to walk and bicycle. Because I know some of the older sidewalk sections in the town and in other communities where the sidewalk is against the curb of basically an arterial road is not a there's not a high level of comfort there, and you kind of walk on the outer edge of the sidewalk, or I do, if you are on those kind of sections. So that's the biggest difference as far as the requirements would go. Um, there's a little bit more, lane width, some difference potentially on those, but the big difference is the right of way widths and the grass strip widths. Does anybody else have anything
Hi,
to add
Mark,
on
it's
this?
Scott.
Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, just had a question for you about that connection between West Kingsgate and Brookmere. Is that going to be designated as a local collector?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Probably not. That one is, well, it's really not constructed even to a local street standard.
Yeah.
So it may function in some ways like that because you would be collecting traffic from two different subdivisions potentially. But we probably won't do anything with that one for a while. We may watch it and see how it gets used. It is kind of in the back of both developments. And I'm not really sure, frankly, how much traffic it's going to have. It may have a fair amount, but it's one of those things that, depending on where you're going, it's either going to be an inviting way to go or not, and it's again it's pretty remote in relation to both Brookmere and Kingsgate.
Yeah. When you look at it on the KGIS, so they've got that road connected a lot farther west than I think it is, or southwest, because they've actually got it on that loop where West Kingsgate comes around and meets up with Midhurst and then back again with West Kingsgate. It looks like it's probably about 10 lots further to the west, the way that they show it on KGIS.
Oh, yeah, okay.
That's the only
Yeah,
comment I
maybe
had.
in there.
Question.
Mhm. Yeah, it could be that this section here, it ties into Brookmere and on out, going back on West Kingsgate to Peterson eventually might function as a local collector. That's a good point.
Scott, I think you're talking about something that is an existing, that's an existing stub road.
That one, okay. So they're not showing the one that's further to the
No,
northeast then.
No.
the
'Cause that's
one
just
that's,
gravel right now.
yeah, the one that you're talking about is actually, it's probably more in this area.
Yeah,
There
that
is a
looks about
stub
right.
out street over here that's further west, and we didn't ask them to tie into that because of the topography there.
Right, right.
So the actual connection is further east, and but you make a good point about how it might function in the future. Is that section plus this section of West Kingsgate may in fact end up functioning kind of like a local collector.
Yeah, I imagine it'll probably have more traffic than you think,
Yeah.
or one would think.
Anybody else have any questions on this major road plan?
Mayor Williams,
Mm-hmm.
um, based on that recent traffic study that was submitted to us, is a portion of Concord Road that goes from Kingston Pike down to where the split's at Campbell Station. What is that now, and what do you think that traffic study shows about that road, that portion of the road? Because that's not considered part of the state highway, right?
I don't believe so, Daryl. You probably would know better than I would, but I think it's currently a major collector, and we didn't propose to change that, but you're talking about this section here.
Right, that was downgraded to a major collector when Campbell Station was extended. But I think where the mayor is going with that is you can observe an awful lot of vehicles coming from the North Shore area that are making a right turn at that intersection with Concord and Campbell Station, going up to Kingston Pike, turning right. That's their regular route. So they're using it really as at least a minor arterial. So it's a good point.
May I've talked with the Concord Hills residents on this, and with the mixed-use town center coming in, I know I'm going to dream a little bit here with you guys, so just bear with me. I would love to see Concord Road turned into more of a street, and consider it more of a walkable environment connected into the mixed-use town center, as far as design. And perhaps having on-street parking, at least on the Biddle side, if that property develops maybe into housing, having an on-street parking capability. And my dog's going to start barking soon, so excuse that. But if that happens, I probably would slow down traffic if you've got on-street parking there. May keep it a collector and push people onto Campbell Station Road, because they won't want to be slowed down by the street nature of Concord Road. So I would love for us to keep it a collector for now, while we kind of work through our plans for how we envision the rest of the town center and how we're going to connect in our existing roads and what we plan to do with them. So that's my 3 cents and a whining dog.
My dog would have barked on that one too.
I believe I have to agree with that one, that it probably ought to stay as it is right now until the Biddle development is going on. And then we can look at that point whether we want to do anything north of the cemetery. So, you know, I agree with you, Louis.
Yeah, the only thing in the town center area that we again were looking at changing was Jamestown Boulevard and just upgrading it from local to major collector. There weren't any other changes in that area. And that's something we'll, like you said, we'll just need to watch it and see how that evolves. Another thing we're planning to do with the major road plan is, if you in the next section on this discussion, is looking at cross sections for really collector streets, because that's really the streets that we would have the most ability to modify, I guess, or change. And the arterials are a little bit more limited. In some cases, TDOT, has control over some of the arterial streets. So, so what we would like to do is, if you pulled up the major road plan map and you clicked on Virtue Road, it would pull up a cross section that you would see for that particular road, something like that, so that you could see that for that section of road, this is the vision of what we would like for it to be, either as it's developed, as properties are developed along it, or if it's redeveloped, like in the case part of it is right now. What is the vision? What's the cross section for the overall street? It may just be half of the street at one moment in time, but again, we looked at these as well back in 2017 when we were talking about the major road plan, and the staff presented actually 8 different cross sections for collector streets. And what we did was, we had a lot of our collector streets, we had some name tags with the different street names on them, and you basically stuck the street on a cross section that you thought was appropriate for that street. So the 2 cross sections that the Planning Commission thought were the most desirable back then, this one was one of them, and there were a few of the collector streets that were seen as good candidates for this. And I realize there's the lane widths and things like that. There's some other discussion points with this, but just to show you some background here. And then the other one, which had a median and a bike lane on this one, was a possible option for a couple of the collector streets in the town. And I'll show some other cross sections that we put together and that will be discussed at the Planning Commission meeting in a minute. And that's what these 4 are. I think really, before we start looking at the cross sections and the vision of our transportation system, there are some general questions that I think we need to step back as a Planning Commission and a community and think about. What problems or issues, and I'm going to call it the people movement system, because that encompasses all forms of transportation, bicycles, pedestrians, motorists. What are the problems or issues that we're trying to address with our vision of our transportation system? And all these things, there's no real right or wrong, and they're all kind of interrelated potentially as well. Safety, providing a better level of service, that's more focused on motorists. Making the community less automobile dependent, so that you can conduct short errands without having to rely on a vehicle. And that's kind of that's really heavily related to planning and land use, and trying to build places that you can walk to, the 20-minute neighborhood concept that we've talked about in the past with the planning commissioners. And looking at the overall connectivity of the town, the greenway connections, the greenway system, the vehicular connections, the more that we can connect everything, the more potentially you open it up to less automobile dependence, because people can actually travel safely on with other means of transportation to get to where they want to get to. So those are kind of some of the bigger questions, I think. And then we just need to think about what's realistic, what what kind of solutions would provide the most bang for the buck, and really best address the problems or issues that the community has identified. So when you go back and start looking at the cross sections again, and these are some of the newer ones that we have put together just for discussion purposes. We looked at the local collector. We have two cross sections for that and two for a major collector. Local collector has a 50-foot total right of way. Major collector has a 60-foot. This cross section,
Mark,
other than yeah.
before you continue on,
Mhm.
I wanted to give just give a little bit more information about my thinking for what we need to be looking at and what we need to be
Okay.
considering.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how many of you follow Strong Towns, but they have a word for a lot of the roads that we have. They're called stroads. They're a combination of a street and a road. And I think if we look at, like what I just explained to you with Concord Road, I want to turn it back into a street. A street is more of a place for people to walk, for people to bike, slower traffic. It's really about people being active on that portion of the road. A road is connecting two different places. It's not necessarily where you want sidewalks and biking and all that right on it. So I think when we're looking at these, we need to think of, okay, where can we, particularly around our town center, like I said about Concord Road, I think Jamestown is another example that we need to really reflect how we want people using that. Is it going to be a street, or is it just going to be a connection between 2 points and make it a road? But try to avoid doing the stroads, because those are what tends to be dangerous. And if we're going to have a road, just move the people and the bikes off of further away from it, and let the cars do what the cars are going to do, and give the pedestrians and bicyclists a more comfortable place a distance away from it. So, and I know, like Union Road, we've decided is a road, so we have a large green space and a trail, a multi-use trail, so that people feel comfortable using that. So I just wanted to give that perspective as we talk through our roads and our streets.
Yeah, and I think that's part of that bigger picture, thinking about what problems or issues are we trying to really address with our transportation system, and a lot of that's reflected in your subdivision regulations. So your regulations come from your vision, and your vision is really the most important thing, because that kind of establishes, like when you look at the major road plan, you click on a road section, that should reflect generally the community's vision for that road and how it's to function and what it means for the community. So we, of course, with all of these cross sections, we consider them all people movement options. They have all forms of transportation. Now, some of them don't. Most of them don't have a bike lane, and that's something that we need to think about um, as a group. And I mean, I do bike on roads, so a bike lane, I understand the value of that. But you only have so much physical space in your public right of way, which is really to me, it's your most important public property, because you got more of it, and it's spread out more through your community. So how you use that linear space, that linear public space, is really critical, even more so than how you use your parks, because you really can make the linear your linear transportation network, kind of a linear park system over time. It takes a long time, but so you've got 50 or 60 feet of physical space. How do you best use that space that would benefit the greatest number of participants? So that's really, to me, the most important thing. Just having a bike lane to check off a box and say that, yeah, we did it, really doesn't mean much to me if it's not really used and it doesn't really connect to a larger kind of more thought out system. Because there's some collector streets where having a bike lane would be great, like Boyd Station Road. I know we will park a lot of times at Anchor Park, and we'll bike out into Loudoun County through Boyd Station Road, and certainly having a little more feeling of safety along Boyd Station Road would be nice. But the issue is, from on each endpoint, you don't have no more bike lanes, so you've consumed that additional valuable physical space for something that it might be questionable. So those are the kind of considerations I think that we need to really think about. So a cross section like this on a local collector, again, this is your lower traffic generation streets. We start out first of all with an 11-foot drive lane. And whether that needs to be the default versus a 12 is a matter of discussion on these. And then you got a curb and gutter section, and then you got the grass strip. On the collector streets, it's a minimum 6-foot grass strip. And then in this particular cross section, you've got a multi-use path, which is with our 8-foot requirement. It says sidewalk, but it's really a walking trail. And then a 5-foot standard sidewalk on the other side. So that might be one option. And then something that's come up, especially out in the southwest part of the town, is a more rural cross section for a local collector, where you would have the 11-foot drive lanes, and then, or maybe not even that much. Then you've got basically an open ditch section on each side that's at least 10 feet wide, and then you have some kind of a shared use, multi-use facility on one, potentially both sides, but at least one side. And that's going to be a little bit lower traffic generation type streets, like Dixon Road right now. It would be a good example of that. Maybe even Allen Kirby, part of Evans Road, potentially, something like that. Then you transition over to the major collector streets, and one thing that we're talking about internally was on a major collector, because it does have a little bit more traffic flow than a local collector, considering to widen the minimum trail width from 8 to 10 feet, where that is abutting the actual street. Now, if it's in a walking trail that's internal to a development, then they could stay at 8 feet. But if it's out here next to this major collector, which gets more traffic, then we're thinking about increasing that from 8 to 10 feet, a shared use path on both sides of 10 feet. And all this fits roughly within the 60-foot right-of-way that you have on a major collector. There's maybe a couple of feet overlap, but that could be easily addressed. So that would fit. Again, if you don't show any bike lane with this, and not because we wouldn't love to have that, but I think it's, again, you got 50 or 60 feet of space if you've got the whole right-of-way to deal with, and how best can you use that to benefit the most users. And then another option is a median option, and this might be something similar to Grigsby Chapel Road. Again, major collector, we're showing at least a 10-foot wide shared use path on one side, keeping that minimum 6-foot grass strip. That's really critical to me to give it a kind of a residential character, because you allow the opportunity for street tree planting, and really changes the character of the street itself. And then having a 6-foot wide sidewalk in this case on one side of the street. So that's the 4 options that we were looking at the staff level, or at least Bart and myself, just throwing out some options for discussion purposes on these collector streets. So that's the cross section component of the discussion, and I think the third component of this discussion is the subdivision regulations themselves. But really, I think you need to really address these bigger questions before you start making changes to your regulations, because the regulations need to reflect the vision. And so, for example, when you go to our subdivision regulations, I know we've had some discussion about variances recently that have been granted with vertical curves and things. And then lane widths, what is appropriate for different street classifications, and those kinds of things. But I think ultimately what you end up deciding with those is really going to be driven by the answers you get on these bigger questions. So, and there probably are other questions that I just haven't thought of, but these kind of questions here really should drive your subdivision regulations and potentially some of your zoning. So that's really all I have on this item, and I'll open it up for some further discussion if anybody has any questions. But that's kind of a snapshot of what we're going to be, or what we plan to present to the Planning Commission on the 15th. So if anybody has anything you want to add or change, or we've completely forgot about, then let me know, and we can talk about it here right now.
I do have a quick question for Daryl. I know as we move through this, obviously, a lot of us like to look at it from a community development point of view, but the reality is we also have to look at it from an engineering point of view. So I assume at some point in all of this, before we get to the point of suggesting amendments to the subdivision regulations, that Daryl will be a big part of this conversation as well. I'm making that assumption. Is that correct, Daryl?
That's my plan, yes.
Yes, absolutely. Daryl and Dan Johnson too. I mean,
Absolutely.
both.
Yeah.
We have to have, we can't really create something that's not realistic, or actually creates a more unsafe situation when we thought we were trying to make something safer. So obviously we have to have the input of various perspectives to make it make sense and achieve the goals, what we're trying to accomplish.
Can I ask Daryl, I know that TDOT has embraced the multimodal transportation policies, and of course that brings a little bit more flexibility into design speed, lane widths, and all of that, and that plays a role in the types of roads that we're going to be designing. Are you seeing the road engineering, I guess, industry kind of coming around to all of this? Or, I mean, I know this is different than how we've been dealing with roads for quite some time, but it is evolving. Are they evolving as well?
Oh, I think so, absolutely. No, it's kind of been part of it for a number of years. I know I've been on the TPO technical committee for 21 years now, and the multimodal has been a big thing. It's unfortunate though that a lot of times that connectivity is the first thing that's given up. Also, we do want a walking environment. I think it's important to maintain our green strips between sidewalks or shared use paths and the roadway. I know Kingston Pike, walking on Kingston Pike on a sidewalk that's right at the back of curb is a little bit difficult. I mean, it's not difficult. It's just unnerving when you have traffic running by just 4 feet away from you at 50 miles per hour.
I call that hostile.
Okay,
It's a
that's a
hostile
good
environment
term for it. Yeah. But you know, I think that's been the understanding for a long time. It's just that we've all got to get on board with it.
All right, I was just checking because I know that sometimes state and the feds put in these fancy ideas and then they don't actually embrace them, and that can be very frustrating as we try to evolve.
Well, I know for a long time there was a big push that we include bike lanes as for instance. I like bike lanes. If I were riding a bicycle on Campbell Station Road, I'd probably still be on the walk myself, but the problem is a lot of people don't use even the bike lanes. I've seen bicyclists in the travel lane. It's a little bit frustrating when you go to all the trouble and expense of including that on a project and then it doesn't get used simply because, well, there is a good bit of grit left in those lanes. So I'll defer to Mark on that. He is much more of a bicyclist. I think we just need, if we're going to include it, we need to maintain them.
I agree with you. I also think we could have benefited. I look at some of our roads as, okay, what could we have done differently? Because really, you're right. Nobody uses those bike lanes. Certainly kids riding to school, if they're going to ride on their bikes, are not going to be in the bike lane. It's not safe. We either need to decide to separate them. I forget I guess what they call that, a separated bike lane or a segregated bike lane or a protected bike lane.
Right.
And once you protect it, going back in there to clean the gravel out of it becomes much more challenging.
Good point.
So then you think, okay, could we have maybe just put a trail in and left for the people that are using their bicycle as transportation? They would probably feel very comfortable using trail because they're not going to be riding that fast. And the folks that are going to bike, are we leaving them on the main road itself, which they're already doing? So I think those are questions we need to, when we talk about putting this committee together for the pedestrian and bicycle committee, we need to make sure that we have people who are bicyclists on it to see really how they're realistically seeing things and using things before we do a road construction. But I agree with you that I think that was the Campbell Station Road was done right when they started embracing these complete streets without really considering, okay, people are driving 45 miles per hour. Well, since then we've learned 45 or 50. Regular bike riders don't feel comfortable with speeds like that. So,
Right. No, I think we need to consider how roads are to be used anyway. And if it's a matter of eliminating sidewalk in order to have a shared use path that has a greater offset, if that allows us to fit a roadway within a certain right of way width, you know, it's a trade-off. I'd rather be on the shared use path that is offset from the road a few more feet.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on this and comments? A lot of stuff to comment on, I guess. There's a whole lot of topics that we could start looking at the subdivision regulations, but like I said a couple of times here, I think we really need to look at the bigger picture questions first and figure out what are we doing? What are we trying to do? What problems or issues are we trying to solve? And kind of go from there.
Well, and you're saying that I think we might want to build flexibility into the subdivision regulations instead of
Mhm.
having like a strict standard. Okay, this is a collector, it's going to be this design speed and this lane width, and build into it. We understand that we're going to be looking at our roads a little more holistically. Perhaps build in the flexibility to know that context matters and what's realistic in our expectations in any particular road that we might be fixing. Of course, the use might evolve depending upon how the land around it develops as well. I think that we don't. The more specific we try to be in our subdivision regulations, I think we end up with some issues with, well, that's the way it's supposed to be because that's what it says here, and then we're missing the opportunity to look at that particular road or street in context. I'm going to I'm going to dig up that article for streets versus roads and stroads, maybe so you can just distribute it to the planning commission so they can
Okay,
kind of
yeah.
start thinking about it from that perspective.
Mhm.
Because realistically, like Virtue Road is a road. It's not, we're not going to treat that as a street. So we tried to pull the multi-use trail off of the side and treat it for the arterial road that it is.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Mhm.
So, and that's kind of the frustration with Everett Road is a road. It's people use it as an arterial, and that the sidewalks are a little too close for comfort, and we need to just respect that when we're building our things. We need to look at each one of them very realistically.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, anything you want me to put in the packet, just if you can get it to me early next week, and I can
Yeah, this is
include that
Commissioner
in.
Green.
Mhm.
I'm looking at the title of this discussion item here. It says updates to the major road plan and the subdivision regulations. So what is the desired product or of this discussion? To change the subdivision regulations and to redo the road plan? Are those the two objectives of this, and to incorporate all those things that we talked about?
Well, the one thing we do need to do is to update the major road plan, and we can do that independent of some of these other things because it hasn't been updated in a while, and we do need to do that, in my opinion, at least. We probably it might take a little longer to look at through the cross sections to because again, ideally, I'd like to if you pulled up the major road plan on the website and you clicked on a street like Allen Kirby Road, for example, it would it would it would have a vision document. What's the intent of this street? What is it supposed to look like in the future? And that can kind of guide if somebody's looking to develop out there or to build a house on the road, they'll kind of have an understanding for what the community's vision is for that street section. Um, I mean, we do need to update the major road plan as far as incorporating the cross sections that could come later, probably maybe through a bigger discussion with the community or a subcommittee that would look at this in a little bit more detail. And then really ultimately from all of that is then you look at your regulations to see what might need to be updated or modified to bring the regulations in line with that vision. I don't
So
know if that makes.
this discussion item is just that, a discussion item. And I think
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Vice Mayor Pablo, and I heard you mention a committee to kind of pull this all together with representatives to.
Well, we talked at our retreat about it's kind of evolved. I had a Safe Routes to School come in and do an analysis of our schools, just trying to figure out how we're going to we'd like to have more kids walking and biking to school if we can make it safe and desirable. And then we started talking about the issues we're seeing in what is our evolving mixed-use town center with our Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road. How are we addressing pedestrian safety there? And then realizing that we kind of need to address that from a town-wide experience. And I just spoke to Mark the other day, how do we see doing that? And I think what we're going to try and do is develop a working committee to address this. And then if we need subcommittees, like a group that wants to work on the safe routes to school, we do that. And if we need to have a group that's specifically interested in how the mixed-use town center evolves, we can do that. So, but we do need to have a working committee of people that are familiar with walking, like you say, you bike, that are familiar with biking in our town or walking in our town in different areas. And I'd love to have some kids on the committee who actually walk or bike to school and can contribute to some of the concerns we have. So yes, and then coming up with a name, which really it is a multimodal transportation planning, because you have to do the roads, and those people were the ones that we want to talk to about the roads. So yeah, that's kind of where we are from the Board of Mayor and Aldermen's retreat, what we kind of have trying to wrap our brains around.
A part of that, when you get to the biking part of it, hopefully the town center will have bike racks for the kids to ride bikes to school. They need to have bike racks. You know, some schools have a lot of bike racks and some have virtually none at all. You know, you've got locations where you expect people to ride bikes and park there and do something at that particular location, and you don't have a bike rack, then it's people kind of look and say, really?
Yeah, that's something we would be requiring, and they do show several bike racks with the town center plan that we'll be talking about here in a minute. So yeah, we definitely want to make sure we have the facilities for the users to be able to have what they need, you know, to do what they want to do as far as their transportation choices. Does anybody else have any questions, last minute questions here before we get into the last item?
John, did that answer your question?
Sort of, although I'm not quite sure I understand how this process is going to work to get from discussion to two products, one being a major road plan revision and two proposed or recommended changes to the subdivision regulations. I'm assuming those are the two products.
Yeah.
And to get to those,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
To get to those two products, we got to do some things. The first part is what we're doing right now, to have a general discussion. The second part is, okay, now we've had this discussion and here are the issues that are important to us or not important to us. How do we take that now and to develop those into recommendations for the changes to the major road plan and to the development? I think what you said before was that a committee would be put together to try to do that, to come up with some recommendations. Did I interpret that correctly?
I would state this: the major road plan is what Mark presented, is probably what we're going to close to what we're going to adopt. We'll have a conversation about it, but we do need to adopt it. It's you know, that's pretty stable.
Yeah, but he mentioned the cross sections too, and that's
yeah. So eventually, we can do the shell of the basically the appearance of it, and then we can go back in and say, okay, how do we envision this road being building out? What's the one over there by not Brookmere, the really expensive one with the houses up high on the hill off of McPhee?
Bridgemore.
Alan Kirby. Alan Kirby's a road. What do we envision that being? That's a conversation we can have within this group and say, okay, we envision it being used this way. So we can specifically go in and look at these different ones and then apply it, and that comes to the Planning Commission. But the general plan is the same. You're still going to have, Alan Kirby's going to be a collector. So what kind of collector do what's the profile we see going there? That I think we need to dig in and have more of a conversation with people who are actually biking and walking and utilizing those roads, because they'll have some perspective that we may not have considered. So that's kind of how I see it evolving. I see us adopting that map and then going in gradually and working through the rest of the process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's how the staff envisions that too. Kind of a two-step. One's going to take longer addressed than the other. Anybody else have anything for this item? Okay. We'll go straight into the next item then. So we're a little bit over. And this one is a discussion and public hearing on a site plan for the Farragut Town Center at Biddle Farms. And of course it's zoned planned commercial development floodplain. And again, similar to the Grove at Boyd Station, the idea behind the staff developer meeting is to discuss with the applicant any comments they may have regarding staff's input that was provided on their plans review. And this is you all have seen this project for quite some time. Various aspects of it. It's evolved over time, I think, into a better and increasingly better project as it's moved through the process. Just to give you again an introduction, again, this is Kingston Pike on the left side of the screen. You enter into the property through this town center street, which has angled parking, and then you come to the Village Green area, which is envisioned as a public space. It would be owned and maintained by the town, be a place for community events and gathering space for this development and the larger community. Then you've got the multifamily section to the south. There is a mid-size tenant here. It's a little under 25,000 square foot building here. And then some modifications to Brookline Street, basically incorporating on-street angled parking onto that street to really change the character, hopefully, of the street and to slow traffic speed through there. And again, just make it, give it the effect of being kind of more of a town center street instead of a traditional major collector, minor arterial type street. And then they would be constructing new street into the property and terminate over onto South Campbell Station Road, and then a loop walking trail around this portion of the development that would also tie internally to the rest of the development, and then a sidewalk out to Concord Road. So that's kind of an overview of the project itself. And this is just some larger images of the project. We'll go through. This is the north side. This is the town center street section. And then the south side is more of the multifamily at this point. Future development, stormwater detention area. The floodplain is up in this area. So the stormwater detention makes sense to be near that, lower part of the development. Then this was the building elevation that was submitted with this set was just for the larger tenant that would be associated with this project. So I guess with that, if anybody representing the applicant has some specific questions or comments on staff comments, then we can try to help answer those and go through that discussion at this time.
And Mark, this is Bud Cullum. Thank you. And
yes, Bud.
Rest of the staff and commissioners and everyone that's on, thank you so much. Obviously, I think everyone on this call certainly at this point is quite familiar with the project. I have Don Kendall and John Anderson both on, and probably will turn it over to them. Yesterday we went through all of the comments, or actually we had been through a lot of the comments. We went through maybe 4 or 5 that we had some questions that we wanted to ask at this particular juncture. So I'm just kind of speaking in general terms, just so everyone will know that things are still moving forward. Great. We're as excited, probably more excited than ever. We're getting some really good interest on the commercial side from what we feel like are the exact type of tenants, both from a retail and a restaurant standpoint, that we had envisioned, and hopefully that the town officials had envisioned also. So we're excited about that. I got an email just a little bit ago announced from First Utility District that about knocked me out of my chair on some fees that they're coming up with. But we're going to look at seeing if we can't get ours approved in time before those kick in. But I'm trying to think of anything else that I should add before we dive down into the weeds. And I think I've covered most things. We're really excited, and this particular what we have sent in is for final site plan approval for all of the civil for the entire project, and as Mark said, for the elevation part for the 20,000 plus or minus tenant, which you showed the picture, it's obvious who it is. It's Aldi, so I'm going to quit beating around the bush. It's there. I think everyone knew that anyway. But the next goal would be for us to submit for the multifamily site plan part of with the elevations and everything next month. And then the final thing that would be submitted would be the individual shop buildings as we get a little bit further along on the architectural with each of the tenants that we're actually talking with. So the idea would still be to potentially be able to start with the first phase of demolition and construction, right around 1st of July if possible. And with all of that being said, I will certainly answer any more high-level questions, but otherwise I'm going to turn it over to Don and John and let them kind of go through specific questions on comments.
I'll be happy to start us off. This is Don Kendall with Development Management Group. Hope y'all are doing well today. John will back me up, but didn't have many items that required much discussion. I think as it relates, Mark, there was a comment on the cover page about construction types and calculations and being able to make sure the buildings can be oriented where they're shown. Could you expand upon that and tell us what you're looking for? I think we generally know what kind of construction types we're going to have, but between restaurants and retail, it could change a little bit. So if you could expand upon that just a little bit and tell us exactly what you're looking for.
Well, that might have been a building code comment. I'm not sure. Usually when you talk about construction types, that's either the building or fire codes comment. So Dan, I know, is in the meeting. Maybe he can comment on that, unless it was specifically from me, but I'm not sure exactly what I would have been. My main concern not concern, but point on the building elevations is just that you have some consistency throughout the whole project, and you meet the minimum requirements, the 75% face brick and those kind of things. So and then our architectural design standards that we have, and that's really, from my perspective, what I would be looking at as far as the type of construction, whether it's a type 3, 2, whatever. That's more of a building and fire code matter that they would have to probably take up with you on, if that's what the question was.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do is we'll just have the architect get with the codes department and just clarify those comments and just make sure that we are appropriately addressing the comment in question.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mark, it's Dan Johnson. May I try and comment on that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I believe the comment was driven by each building needs the square footage and the associated construction type for that building, perhaps as a note in the middle of where the building pad is. I believe that was Elliot's comment, but mine would be the same thing.
Yeah, and I think the only concern we have about that is that a lot of these uses are still in play as to what they're going to be. Like, you know, the apartments and the multifamily, that's pretty easy. The grocery store, we know exactly what we're doing there and can provide that. But when it comes down to the individual retail shops, you know, it could be mercantile, it could be assembly. We're not exactly sure what each of those uses will be and may not know that till we get a little further down the road. Is that something that we can have as a contingent approval and just state that we'll, you know, when we come back with building elevations for that I believe have to go through planning commission, that will address it at that time?
Yeah, so mainly we're looking for the construction type and the size of that building initially. As far as going down for the actual occupancy type, yes, we can deal with that at a later point, but the construction type and the size of the building really needs to be on there.
Okay. The next comment we had was the fire marshal commented on fire access around the village green area. Currently, we're showing a 14-foot pavement width around that circle, no curbs. And John, is it 14 or 16 currently?
It's 14 feet, and then there's a 2-foot gutter.
Okay, so we're showing a 16-foot surface. I believe the comments come back that per the fire code, they want to have a 20-foot there. We've encountered this in numerous jurisdictions before and seen it treated many different ways. In the town that I'm from, Nashville, they allow us to have a 16-foot paved area, but then do a 2-foot overhang easement so that the truck overhang, if there is any, you know, it's not impeded by anything. We can provide the 20-foot, but we don't want to take away your green area that you guys were pretty adamant about having. So we're just looking for maybe a little more information on the best way to handle that piece of it.
Mark, it's Dan Johnson. I can probably speak to that. The fire code is pretty clear on what the width is. However, there would be alternatives to meeting that, perhaps grass pavers or some other alternative material. I would not be opposed to that, but I don't believe there's any leniency shown in those requirements. If the board decided that they wanted to change that regulation, then that's at their discretion. But I am open to alternatives. So if there's a path of X feet and then additional path that is some alternative material that meets the load requirements, then I'm willing to look at that.
Okay. We might just throw that out to the group to say if there's a preference in doing this one way or versus the other, to expand the paved area, to put a concrete lip around the edge of the green area, or to try to do some green pavers that would allow for truck impact. But we're open to whatever the best solution is. But definitely want everyone to weigh in when it comes to the village green.
And this is Bud Cullum again. That's I hadn't thought of the grass paver type thing. It's a good idea. I know they did a big field with grass pavers at Cedar Springs Church, and it's worked out fairly well. So anyway, I hadn't thought of that. It's a good idea.
And then the last big comment that we just weren't certain about was there's indication, and Dan, this is probably you as well, that we need to do fire flow projections on each of the buildings. And we're curious if that can come with the building permit submittals, or is that something that you're looking for on the very front end?
No, I need a calculated fire flow for each building based for the site approval. That's to we need to verify there's adequate line sizes and volume and similar before you get too far along. If we approve the site and then wait until the building permits for that, it can cause issues. However, I'm essentially looking for the calculation out of the appendix, which leads back to the construction type, size, and then it's calculated out of a chart in the appendices of the fire code.
Okay.
Don, this is Bud again. So am I assuming then that we're taking our best estimate when we're dealing, we can probably do that on the multifamily, but when we're on some of the shops that we're not sure whether it's going to be a restaurant or just a retail shop, we take our best shot, and if that comes in and the final plans are different, then does it get dealt with at that point? I just want to make sure that we're able to capture the information at this point that Dan's looking for.
Yeah, and I think that's the struggle that we've got today is that, in most of those shops, I think we're starting to have an idea of what some of the pieces that are going to go into those shops areas, but we don't have clear direction on how much of each building would either be restaurant, or really it comes down, in my opinion, to restaurant versus retail. And restaurant is going to have a higher demand from a fire flow perspective. So the only thing I would know to do is to either speculate and just kind of pick something and hope for the best, or take a worst case scenario and assume they're all restaurants. Dan, what do you think is the best option there to satisfy your needs?
Actually, if you'll refer to Appendix B of the 2018 International Fire Code, all we need to have is the construction type and the size, and we can get the estimated fire flow. We don't need the occupancy type.
Okay.
So you should be able to do that based on the construction type and whether it's sprinklered or not, and the size. So again,
we don't. In a lot of cases, we just don't know what that's going to be today because.
I think Don, I think what he's saying is if we look at Appendix B, it's just the size of the building and the building type, which we would know the building code type, I would think at this point. And then apparently there's a general formula. Is that what I'm hearing, Dan?
That's correct. That's correct.
So I think what Dan's saying is just go to Appendix B and put your type and your square footage, and it'll give us the answer.
Okay.
I want to make sure, Dan, again, was that correct the way I said that?
Yes, sir. That's accurate. Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah, I think what we'll have to do is we're going to have to get our architect engaged on that, because that's typically what they're doing, and we don't have the engagement at this level of the site plan. We don't have a lot of architectural engagement, so we'll have to get them involved to help with that.
But we know the building type because I think Farragut has a code that says what building type we have to use, I believe, don't they?
Example would be type 3 construction, 4,000 square feet.
Right.
Correct. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
So we'll just use that for all of them at this point.
There you go.
Yeah, I think the concern you all have, or the uncertainty, is these 4,000 square foot buildings may be one 7,500 square foot building that has a lot of outdoor seating. So that's what they don't really know at this point. These are to some degree speculative. So there is going to be a little bit of guessing, I think, at this point. I think as far as what we want to, I think, make sure about is, as you're putting the infrastructure in to service this whole development, that you have the infrastructure in place that can accommodate, I guess, probably the worst case scenario, or maybe it's a best case scenario to me. All restaurants would be kind of nice, but you know, I understand where you're coming from with not really knowing that. I'm sure it's not going to develop with every building being 4,000 square feet. I'm almost promise you that's not going to happen.
No, but
So
I think for the purposes right now, if we say, as the mayor said, type 3 construction, 4,000 square feet on these buildings, and if we have one come in and instead of 4,000s, it's a 7,500 or or 1,7,500 or however it may be, I think hopefully that's something that we can certainly address at that time. I guess I'm asking that of Dan. Is that possible?
Yes, yes. That's fine. This is to give us a baseline of what our fire hydrant layout is, what our main sizes need to be, and access and those type of things. So yes, that's a more than fair evaluation.
All right, thank you.
One more thing I failed to mention on the driveway widths and the fire truck access. We're going to have the same issue on Brooklawn Street where we've installed the medians. We don't have 20-foot clear there, so we'll have to come up with a similar solution there for the fire trucks, and the grass, the pavers under the grass may be the best way to do that as well.
well, we need to be thinking about the maintenance too, future maintenance, because you know, if the town's going to be maintaining any of this stuff, we need to think about the product that's going to be used, and it's going to be something that we can easily maintain and maintain without, you know, a lot of additional expense. So that's something that we'll need to think about and work with the public works director a little bit on that, as well as other staff, to make sure that whatever ends up, you know, happening out there to achieve that requirement, that it's not going to be a maintenance nightmare.
Definitely agree. And if you guys, I mean, because that's out in the street, if you want to just tell us what we need to do there, that we'll do that.
Yeah, we can look at it internally at the staff level, I think, but we definitely want to think about maintenance.
Is that something that needs to be decided on in the next 2 weeks, or can this get approved subject to finalization of that issue between us and staff, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, I think there needs to be, you know, some movement as to what you want to propose, and then, you know, we can work with you all to see if it's something that we feel like that we would want to see there. Maybe just look at other locations where these kind of variable applications have been applied, and, you know, have they been decent to maintain? They haven't been created a lot of maintenance issues, and just kind of looking at those. And I'd like to try to show as much as, you know, as you can, and not have big changes on down the road. I would like to try to settle on a approach to deal with those comments that we all can live with. So
I think we can submit a product for the Village Green portion. The medians may be a little bit different. John, can you remind us how big those medians are today on Brooklawn?
They'll be 7 feet wide, I believe. They're 7 feet wide. I'm pretty sure on your cross section sheet that those were 7 feet in width.
10 foot back to back.
Is it 10 back to back? Okay.
Yes.
And so if we needed to add 4 foot to each one, it basically takes them out.
would it make sense just to have those as a mountable concrete?
I'm not sure. I think we probably just need to have a conversation between the designers and some of the staff to figure out what options we want to look at. It's too much to try to design on the fly at a meeting. We probably need to look at that a little bit closer.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think we can provide a product for the Village Green that could also be applied to Brooklawn. And then if you guys want to evaluate that, and then just get back with us if we want to do something different on Brooklawn, that would be fine.
Okay.
Sound like a plan?
Sounds fine to me. Yeah. Were there other questions or comments that you all had before we open it up to planning commissioners, board members?
There was a couple I have, Mark.
Okay.
There's one down there in the front. We're providing a future stub out connection if and when the Mexican restaurant redevelops, that it could be tied into the town center. That little stub out
right there.
It's not really right. It's just
Oh,
trying to get
that's
that
not a turnaround. Okay.
No, I mean, it functions as one now, but I mean, in the future, when the Mexican restaurant was to redevelop, it could be connected.
Okay, I would just make that clear then on the plans that that's kind of a dual function. It has an immediate function, but then it also is a location for a future tie-in if that were to redevelop on that corner, which that makes sense. We'd want to have a connection there.
Now the other one I think is probably for Daryl. There's stormwater that comes from Kingston Pike existing, and we're rerouting it to miss the proposed building locations. And then there's also the drainage from the Kroger marketplace that crosses Brooklawn, goes into the existing retention pond that we're rerouting to the new pond. And there's comments about keeping those junction boxes out of the roadway.
Right.
There's so many other utilities and stuff we're having to bring through here and trying to avoid conflicts and stuff. We really don't.
I can imagine.
Also fighting the fall, you know, invert wise, that we don't, and if we move them, we lose trees. If we move them into landscape islands. And so we feel like we've probably got those located in the best spot. I know not ideal to have them in the roadway, but it's so tight with all the other design elements. Don't really have any other option.
Let me think about that a little more and talk to other staff. It's a little unusual, but you know, the project itself is a little different than what we're used to seeing. I see your point. If you move a manhole over to a tree location, well, you're not going to have it. You're not going to be able to plant a tree there. Let me talk with others a little more and give that some thought.
Okay.
I'll try to get back with you.
Do you have anything else, John, on that?
No, I believe it was all the comments I had questions
Okay.
about.
Does any planning commissioners or board members have anything you want to ask or any comments at this point?
I don't want to let you down. This is Commissioner Green here. So yeah, I have a couple of comments.
That's fine. Yeah, good.
I've listened to the discussion regarding the clearance for the fire apparatus. And I think I heard Don Kendall mention that there was another city that had a solution where you didn't quite have the 20 feet. And repeat that again for me, what that solution was.
So in Metro Nashville, I think it's the National Fire Code that's being followed here that requires a 20-foot clearance for fire vehicles. Here in Metro Nashville, they determined that they didn't necessarily need that full 20 foot to function. The wheels and the base don't typically extend beyond the 16 foot that we would be showing, but they also, above that wheelbase, they'll have an overhang on each side with the box, that contains the fire truck. And they've allowed developers to provide 16 feet paved area and then do a 2 foot clearance easement on each side. So there's no obstructions in that extra 2 feet on each side, so that when the truck is wheeling through there, they don't hit anything. It'd be like a bush or a shrub that was planted right on the edge, that would obstruct them from getting through.
Okay, that's pretty much the way I understood what you said. So why does that not apply to us? We, I presume, are using the same National Fire Code that they are. So why is it that we cannot do that?
Dan Johnson, I could probably speak to that. I think Nashville has made amendments to make it to lessen that requirement. We're utilizing what the standard is, and they have reduced that, which the elected body can do if they choose to.
Oh, okay. So they've taken exception to the code.
No,
correct.
Just an amendment to the code.
Yeah, and I think,
You can make an amendment.
various jurisdictions treat it differently. I think Nashville felt they needed to because they had a lot of urbanized areas where it was going to really provide a challenge to accommodate that. So I think that's why they came up with that solution. More of the suburban districts may not be inclined to take such amendments, but
Okay.
it should be available to you if you desire it.
Yeah, no, okay, I understand that now, but I was confused as to why it was acceptable there and not here, but I understand now what you're saying and what they did. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor Williams here. I think we had some discussion back and forth with a few of the staff concerning a restroom on the east side of the Great Lawn. I guess would be over to the south of that triangle there where the driveway comes from Concord Road. Either the triangle or right where the thing is at now.
Yeah, Mark, this right where it is. Go back up, right in there. Kind of just on an angle, come straight back down toward the first multifamily building. Right in that area. We discussed this yesterday, and there's room. Of course, that would be the closest place to facilitate being right near the town green. So our thought would be to come up with a diagram, maybe to show that right in that area, if you would agree with that, Mayor, and rest of the members.
I think that would be a excellent location. As you have events there, I'm sure the restaurants and Aldi and the small shops would prefer that the participants that would come to an event there would have a restroom, public restroom, and it would also be near the walking trail. I think that would be a excellent location for it.
Okay.
If you can draw that in.
Yeah, we can. We'll go ahead and take a stab at that this week and try to show something there. I guess the plan would be to try to get obviously something that looks nice and something that has as many, obviously we would have men's and women's restrooms, and then as many stalls, whatever you want to call it, as we can get. I'm assuming, and with that, am I on the right path?
Well, you're probably looking at the wrong person to say how many stalls you need for something like that.
I'll bet you Sue Stoll would probably have some good input on that.
Yeah, she does it for the parks. And so something along that line, park type restroom. Uh, I think the last one we built or had built was old Campbell Station Inn and Mayor McGill Plaza. But we just recently completed an ADA compliant one at the Anchor Park location. And I think the other locations we have are also ADA compliant, and they're more of a park style restroom, which makes them very durable. Wouldn't be like what we'd have in the town hall or anything like that, but it'd be more like what's in one of our parks.
Okay. John Anderson, is that someone that you could call, or you take a look? Who do we have just lay out a configuration? I'm not asking you to try to show what the architecture would look like, but
But I would ask David to connect with Sue and see if they have, they may have, I'm sure David has an idea of what we think we might need in that location. I think he's the best contact on that.
I'm assuming, David, you are on listening, right?
This is Trevor, the assistant to the town administrator. I'll make sure David looks into that. We'll get you that detail.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Anyone else have any questions or comments?
There was a late comment on an email I saw from Daryl regarding the existing side Kingston Pike.
Yep.
And I wasn't sure. Is that in fact a comment or not, or do we need to discuss it? And, I mean, from my standpoint, I wasn't exactly sure. I'd like that to be maybe lumped in with the bathroom facility, maybe.
Well, I mean, I can have Daryl can speak to that, but I think the thought was while this is being redeveloped, we ought to look at the sidewalk along Kingston Pike and make it a more inviting space for the pedestrian, especially since this is a town center project in the heart of our town center with schools all nearby there too. That's what he was getting at, to try to increase that grass strip width and make it a more inviting space.
Okay. I would request maybe that it be factored into kind of the way we're doing or would propose to do the community restroom. Maybe that was a question for the mayor.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that.
I'm sorry, I don't either. But I did want to throw that in because really the walkability of this area of Kingston Pike, I spoke to it earlier. It's just miserable walking on that sidewalk. It really does need to be wider and set back away from the curb and gutter. And maybe that's something that, well, we need to talk about it anyway.
All right.
Yeah, because you can introduce, if you can widen that space, you can introduce some street trees and then really kind of visually change the character of that section of Kingston Pike and tie it in better visually with your development. So I think that we just would hate for it to get redeveloped and think of it as an afterthought and say, oh gosh, man, we should have done that. And,
yeah,
because it really,
I'll get on that.
Okay. Anybody else have any thing you want to add on this item? Other commissioners still on the call that want to have any comments?
I'm just gonna.
David, I don't have anything.
Okay.
I have just one thing. I'm putting the removal of the old Kroger building on my calendar for July. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Oh my, I'm glad I don't have my video on. My face would really be red if I messed this one up. So noted, Vice Mayor.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, well, if you can try to make the revisions by end of Monday, and yeah, if you could, John, to please include a comment response on that and just show us where you've addressed the comments, or then we can more easily compare it to the initial review, if you don't mind.
Okay, that's not a problem.
I think that's all I had on this item, unless anybody else has anything at last minute.
Mark, do you have a list of those comments in Word or any kind of number order that work out?
Yeah, I don't have them in a numbered order. I think I just have them in that grouping that I emailed you. Well, I know what one applicant did was actually just took the Bluebeam document, and they basically just typed in under each comment how and where it was addressed.
Okay, you sent us the full plans. Can we get the Bluebeam version?
Oh yeah, I can send you the comments. I didn't realize that you didn't have that. Yeah, I'll send you the summary. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else have anything? If not, that concludes the staff developer meeting for March 30th. And these
Mark,
items will be,
again.
huh?
No, it was Bud. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just
Oh, that's all right.
thank everyone again, especially you and staff and all of the commissioners and board members that are on. I just can't thank you enough for the hard work you all have put into this project.
Sounds good. We're excited about it.
We are very excited about it. Happy that we can move through this process.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Y'all take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Daryl.
All right. Thanks a lot.